Hello, welcome to my channel, Leah Decodes. Look closely because the moment you understand this, your dating life will never feel the same again. Most men chase attention. But the men women obsess over do something far more unsettling. I'm going to tell you a truth most men never hear because it threatens everything they've been taught about attraction. Women do not become obsessed with men who try to impress them. They become obsessed with men who make them feel something rare inside themselves. Not excitement, not validation. Identity shift. The man who triggers obsession is the man who quietly changes how a woman sees herself when she's around him. He doesn't perform. He doesn't plead. He doesn't flood her with words. He creates a psychological contrast so sharp that her mind keeps returning to him even when he's gone. Here is what most men misunderstand. They think attraction is built through addition, more compliments, more texting, more effort, more availability. But obsession is built through subtraction, the removal of predictability, the removal of emotional dependency, the removal of the need to be chosen. When a woman senses that a man's life is already full, already meaningful, already moving forward without her permission, something ancient inside her wakes up. Her brain does not interpret that as rejection. It interprets it as value. The one thing these men do is this. They remain emotionally centered in themselves. They don't orbit her emotions. They don't chase her moods. They don't let her uncertainty rewrite their self-worth. This creates a subtle tension, not anxiety, not games. Tension rooted in stability. She feels him as grounded, self-directed, and unshaken. And when a woman feels a man like that, her nervous system relaxes while her curiosity intensifies. That combination is powerful, it's rare, it's addictive. Notice the paradox. The man who doesn't need her approval becomes the man whose approval suddenly matters. Not because he withholds affection, but because his affection feels earned, not begged for. His presence feels intentional, not desperate. When he speaks, he doesn't rush to explain himself. When he listens, he doesn't try to fix. He allows silence. And silence, when paired with confidence, forces reflection. Reflection creates emotional depth. Emotional depth creates attachment. This is why women replay conversations with certain men late at night, not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. The space he left allowed her mind to step into him, to imagine, to wonder, to feel. Obsession grows in that space. Most men try to be unforgettable by being louder. These men become unforgettable by being grounded. They don't over-pursue. They don't disappear. They simply stay aligned with their own direction. And when a woman senses that a man would continue becoming more himself with or without her, she doesn't feel ignored. She feels challenged. And challenge activates desire. This is not manipulation. This is psychological alignment. It's what happens when a man stops chasing reactions and starts embodying purpose. And once a woman experiences how it feels to be with a man who is emotionally sovereign, she doesn't just like him. Her mind keeps pulling her back, asking a dangerous question. Who am I when I'm with him? That question lingers because it touches growth, mystery, and self-expansion, not fear. When attraction meets self-respect, it doesn't burn out quickly. It deepens slowly, quietly, irresistibly, shaping memories, expectations, and emotional investment without demanding anything up front. That is the beginning of real fixation. It rewires desire at a psychological level. What most men never realize is that obsession doesn't begin in desire. It begins in emotional contrast. A woman doesn't become fixated on a man because he makes her feel constantly good. She becomes fixated because he makes her feel more aware. Aware of herself, aware of her emotions, aware of the gap between who she is now and who she could become. That awareness is uncomfortable, magnetic, and deeply personal. Here's the hidden mechanism. When a man is emotionally regulated, When he doesn't rush to fill every pause or smooth every feeling, a woman's emotional system starts doing the work instead. She leans inward. She reflects. She feels more than she expected to feel. Most men unknowingly steal that process from her by over-communicating, over-reassuring, and over-explaining. They make everything safe, predictable, and flat. Comfort without depth creates boredom. Depth without chaos creates obsession. The man women obsess over doesn't try to be mysterious. He's simply not performing for approval. His emotional responses are clean. If he's interested, he shows it calmly. If he's unavailable, he doesn't dramatize it. If something bothers him, he addresses it without aggression or apology. This emotional clarity is rare, and rarity triggers value perception. Her mind begins categorizing him differently from other men. Not louder, not flashier, just different. This difference creates a psychological anchor. She starts measuring interactions with other men against how she feels around him. And here's the part most men miss. Obsession doesn't come from intensity. It comes from consistency paired with independence. He doesn't disappear to provoke anxiety. He doesn't cling to provoke reassurance. He stays steady. And steadiness is disarming when the world feels emotionally chaotic. When a woman senses that a man is not emotionally reactive to her moods, she feels safe enough to reveal more of herself, not because he demands vulnerability, but because his presence doesn't punish honesty. She can be uncertain without being chased. She can pull back without being guilted. She can lean in without being smothered. That freedom becomes intoxicating. And once she tastes it, she doesn't want to go back to emotional volatility disguised as passion. Her attachment grows quietly. She starts thinking about how he would respond to situations. She imagines conversations. She wonders what he thinks, not because he withholds, but because his inner world feels solid and self-contained. Humans are drawn to what feels whole. Fragmented energy repels, integrated energy attracts. This is where obsession deepens. Not through words, but through emotional mirroring. His calm becomes her regulation. His focus becomes her grounding point. When she's around him, she feels more like herself, not the performative version, but the grounded one. And the brain remembers that. It associates him with emotional coherence, with clarity, with relief. Most men try to be memorable by creating highs. These men become unforgettable by creating alignment. Alignment between words and actions, between interest and boundaries, between desire and self-respect. And when a woman experiences that alignment, her nervous system flags it as important, as rare, as something not to be wasted. Obsession doesn't feel dramatic at first. It feels thoughtful, quiet, reflective. It shows up as curiosity, as comparison, as subtle longing. And by the time she realizes how deeply he's embedded in her emotional landscape, it's already too late because the mind doesn't let go of what feels like emotional truth. There's a moment that happens silently, almost invisibly, when a woman crosses from interest into obsession. It's the moment she realizes she cannot control how much a man affects her. Not because he dominates her world, but because he doesn't need to. His influence exists without effort, and that unsettles her in a way that feels alive. This is where male self-containment becomes dangerous in the most attractive way. The man women obsess over does not leak his emotions everywhere. He doesn't narrate his insecurities. He doesn't seek constant reassurance. That doesn't mean he's closed off. It means he has processed himself before inviting someone else in. His emotional house is clean. And when a woman steps into that space, she feels the difference immediately. Here's the psychology behind it. When someone is emotionally self-sufficient, the brain perceives them as a source, not a drain. Most men unknowingly communicate emotional hunger. They want to be chosen, validated, soothed. That pressure is felt instantly, even if it's never spoken. The man who creates obsession communicates something else entirely. He says without words, "I choose you because I want to, not because I need to." That distinction rewires attraction. A woman may not consciously articulate this, but her nervous system picks it up. She feels no urgency to perform, no pressure to manage his feelings, no responsibility for his emotional stability. That freedom is rare, and rare experiences are remembered more vividly than pleasant ones. Her mind begins associating him with ease, not effort. And ease, when paired with strength, becomes irresistible. Another critical shift happens here. She stops asking whether he likes her and starts asking whether she fits into his life. This is subtle but profound. The power dynamic flips not through manipulation, but through self-respect. He has standards, he has rhythm, he has priorities, and none of them are abandoned for attention. This makes his interest feel selective. Selectivity creates value. He also does something most men fear. He allows her to feel her own emotions fully. If she's confused, he doesn't rush to fix it. If she pulls back, he doesn't chase to restore comfort. He trusts her emotional process, and trust communicates confidence. Confidence signals safety. Safety allows desire to deepen instead of burning out. This is why women obsess over men who don't overreact. Emotional neutrality in the face of uncertainty is powerful. It says, "I am solid regardless of outcome." That solidity becomes an emotional anchor. When her world feels uncertain, her mind drifts back to the man who felt steady, not because he promised anything, but because he embodied something. She starts to notice how different she feels around him compared to others. Conversations feel grounded, time feels slower, she feels seen without being examined, wanted without being chased. That combination is rare because it requires discipline, not tactics. Most men are driven by impulse. These men are driven by intention. Obsession grows when a woman senses that a man's presence improves her internal state without demanding anything in return. That improvement becomes addictive. She wants to feel that way again. So she thinks about him, replays moments, imagines future interactions, not because he planted ideas, but because her mind associates him with emotional clarity. And here's the part that most men get wrong. He doesn't create obsession by withholding love. He creates it by not overinvesting before trust exists. His pacing is calm, his interest is measured, his actions are consistent. There's no emotional whiplash, no confusion, just quiet strength. That quiet strength becomes loud in her mind, because what is calm in reality becomes powerful in memory. And once a woman's inner world starts orienting itself around the emotional state she experiences with one man, letting go no longer feels like a choice. It feels like loss. By the time obsession takes root, it no longer looks like desire. It looks like internal alignment. A woman doesn't feel pulled toward a man like this because she wants him. She feels pulled because her mind has already placed him in a category reserved for meaning, and meaning is far more powerful than attraction. This happens when a man lives in congruence. His words don't race ahead of his actions. His actions don't contradict his values. There is no split energy, no performance, no emotional baiting. When a woman encounters that level of internal consistency, her brain relaxes while her curiosity sharpens. She senses that what she sees is what she gets. And paradoxically, that honesty creates depth. Most men think mystery comes from hiding. Real mystery comes from coherence. When someone is fully themselves without over-explanation or apology, their presence invites exploration, not because they are confusing, but because they are grounded. Grounded men don't chase validation. They allow connection to unfold at a human pace. That pace gives emotions time to root. Here's the quiet trigger that deepens obsession. The man doesn't collapse his life around her availability. He doesn't rearrange his purpose to be more appealing. He invites her into his world without shrinking it. That invitation feels earned, not forced. She doesn't feel consumed. She feels included. Inclusion activates belonging. Belonging activates attachment. Another psychological shift happens here. She begins to feel emotionally safe without feeling emotionally dependent. Safety without dependency is rare. Many relationships confuse intensity with closeness. This man creates closeness through reliability, not urgency. He shows up when he says he will. He leaves when he needs to. There is no emotional bargaining, just presence. When a woman senses this, her guard lowers naturally. She shares thoughts she doesn't usually voice. She reveals fears without bracing for judgment, not because he demands vulnerability, but because his steadiness makes vulnerability feel like strength instead of risk. And once vulnerability is met with calm acceptance, attachment deepens automatically. He also does something subtle but powerful. He doesn't try to be everything to her. He allows her to have a full life outside of him. Friends, interests, space. This signals abundance, not scarcity. Scarcity creates anxiety. Abundance creates desire. When she feels free, she chooses. And chosen attachment is stronger than forced closeness. Obsession solidifies when she realizes she is becoming more emotionally honest around him, more grounded, more present. Not because he changed her, but because his presence allowed her to be herself without friction. The mind protects experiences that feel authentic. It clings to them. It revisits them. It prioritizes them. This is why women don't obsess over men who overwhelm them emotionally. They obsess over men who stabilize them without controlling them. Men who lead their own lives with clarity. Men who don't outsource their identity to relationships. Men who don't need to win her, but welcome her. At this stage, her thoughts are no longer about attraction. They're about integration. How does he fit into my future? How does life feel when he's around? How do I feel when he's not? These questions emerge quietly without pressure. And that's what makes them dangerous, because once the mind starts framing someone as part of its emotional baseline, separation feels unnatural. The man didn't promise anything. He didn't demand anything. He simply stayed true to himself long enough for her mind to trust the consistency. And trust once formed becomes the foundation. Obsession grows on. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply, patiently, and persistently. At the deepest level, obsession forms when a woman realizes something unsettling. This man does not need to be understood to remain steady. He does not require constant reassurance to stay present. He does not collapse when outcomes are uncertain, and that realization changes how her mind relates to him forever. Because most emotional connections are conditional. They depend on attention, validation, consistency of response. Remove one piece and the structure weakens, but the man women obsess over is internally complete. His emotional state does not hinge on how the story turns out. He wants connection, but he is not defined by it. And when a woman senses that, her mind categorizes him as safe and significant. That combination is rare. Here's the final psychological lock. She starts trusting his absence as much as his presence. When he's not there, she doesn't feel abandoned. She feels continuity. His energy doesn't disappear. When the interaction ends, it lingers. That lingering isn't created by words or promises. It's created by coherence. Who he is remains the same whether she's watching or not. This is why obsession doesn't fade quickly with men like this. There's no emotional crash, no disappointment, no moment where the fantasy breaks because there was never a performance to begin with. What she experienced was real, grounded, consistent, and the brain doesn't easily release what it registers as authentic. At this point, her attraction is no longer about excitement. It's about emotional orientation. Her nervous system knows where calm lives. Her mind knows where clarity exists. When stress hits, when confusion arises, When she feels overwhelmed by the noise of life, her thoughts drift back to the man who felt centered, not because he rescued her, but because he reminded her of balance. This is where many men sabotage themselves. They sense her attachment and suddenly overstep. They start explaining more, chasing more, trying harder. But the man women obsess over does the opposite. He stays the same. He doesn't capitalize on her interest. He respects it. He doesn't speed things up to secure certainty. He allows things to unfold naturally. That restraint communicates strength. Strength without control is magnetic. It says, I trust myself enough to let this grow at the right pace. And that trust deepens hers because now she's not just attracted to him. She trusts his judgment, his pacing, his emotional leadership. Trust transforms obsession from desire into investment. Eventually, she realizes something that feels both comforting and frightening. Being with him doesn't complete her. It aligns her. She doesn't lose herself in him. She finds herself more clearly around him. And once a woman associates a man with self-alignment rather than emotional chaos, detachment feels like regression. That's why she thinks about him without trying to. That's why she compares future connections to how she felt with him. That's why his absence feels noticeable, not painful, but meaningful. Meaning is the deepest hook of all. And here is the truth most men never hear. Women don't obsess over men who give them everything. They obsess over men who remain whole while sharing themselves selectively. Men who don't chase attachment, but allow attachment to form naturally. Men who don't ask to be chosen because they already chose themselves. Now ask yourself this honestly. When you walk away from interactions, do people feel calmer, clearer, and more grounded? Or do they feel entertained but unchanged? If this video made you reflect, write your answer in the comments. Like the video, subscribe for more deep relationship psychology, and share this with a friend who needs to hear this truth right now.